Hi, everybody. You may be able to hear me, but you probably can't see me yet because I have to fix my camera again. Sorry about that. There I am. Turned out to be easier than I thought it would be, at least for the moment. Though there's a delay, so you still can't see me. There I am, at least for a second. See what happens. Thank you all for coming. So last night we talked about the various reactions we had to Bernie's endorsement, of Joe Biden. And then, of course, what we do from here. So for the time being, I want to keep on talking about that. So for the time being, I want to keep on talking about that. And I want to talk more specifically about the kinds of things that I would like to do. So last time we talked about the possibility of setting up a group that would be devoted to telling people on social media what Joe Biden's actual record is. The frank purpose of such activity would be to make clear why Joe Biden is unacceptable to us, and hopefully to lower his polling to the point where the Democrats realize that he has to be unacceptable to them too, because he has too little chance to win. And that if they nominate somebody so feckless that they are sure to lose, they can hardly retain their legitimacy as a political party, which to some degree they still retain, and which to some degree we can assume they want to continue to retain. The feed seems to be very weak tonight and unsteady, so you can expect that I'm going to fade out while this is going on and come back in again and fade out and come back in again. There's very little I can do about that. I think the load on the internet, okay, is very, very high, and there's no way I can keep the feed to my camera entirely steady. Hi, Jim Lockett. I see you're here again. Hi, Kay, Steve Wolfbrandt, Margot Shepard. Hi, Matt Waldy. Hi, Kay, again. Stephanie, hi, great to see you. It says, I will never vote for Joe Biden on a huge blue background. Rick Maynard says, evening all. Here's the next meeting of Crowdcast. Collective care in a, I don't know it's in a what, but in a register. Steve Day is here. And Rick Maynard is continuing the campaign at a site called peoplesaction.org, not me, us. That's a good site. We might want to take a look at it. Let's see what Steve has to offer at that site. I'm sorry, see what Rick has to offer at that site, I should say. Sandy Degg is here. Kathy Langen. Hi, Kathy, Sandy. And Dolores is here. Hi, Dolores. Hey, Steve Wolfbrandt. Great to see you. Stacy Van Veen. Great to see you. It's great to see you all. So, I've been beginning to operationalize plans to start a group that would be devoted to bringing Joe Biden's actual record to the public on social media. And I made some progress thus far. We have 7 co-admins lined up this time, including myself. I think that's a pretty good start for the group. And one of us is working on a graphic as well. And as soon as the graphic is ready, I will create the group and we will be able to get started. Okay. Oh, Rick has an interesting... Join us tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. Hey, Rick, it's now 9:20 p.m. Eastern. For Not Me Us, a live stream for the revolution. We'll be joined by Pramila Jayapal and Ilhan Omar. Sanders for President 2020 leaders, including National Director for Organizing and Field, Misty Rebeck. National Political Director, Ana Lilia Mejia. Any relation to Kenneth? And California, New York State Director, Rafael Navar. People's Action Director, George Goel. A lot of well-known names there. Campaign Director, Kenyella Eng. We can discuss how we can build momentum for the ideas that actually unite us. And all that sounds very good. But, I don't want to lose sight of what I think it is our duty to do at this point for the short run anyway. And by the short run, I mean over the next 4 months. And that is to bring the record of Joe Biden once again to the American public on social media. And if after we do that, okay, if the Democrats still want to follow him into the abyss at the convention, then so be it. But I don't think that we should be a part of that particular process. There are many of us here who still feel a never Biden, and we feel that way for very good reasons. And people will tell us how horrible Trump is. And of course, they will use the coronavirus and COVID now and the likely very large numbers of deaths that are going to result due to the delay of Donald Trump in moving to handle the virus. Someone who was more competent as a president and who was more concerned over the American people, and just someone even more inclined to listen to his experts, might have avoided quite a few of the deaths that we have seen here thus far, and quite a few of the deaths to be. And I grant that. But I also want to mention to you the following. In 2009, the Democrats had the majorities in the House, and in the Senate, such that through reconciliation or through getting rid of the filibuster in the Senate, they could have passed the Medicare for All bill right then and there. But the Obama-Biden administration did not want to pass such a bill. As a result, according to my own estimate, in a blog post that I authored some time ago, 356,000 people died due to lack of insurance during the Obama administration because Obama went with the Affordable Care Act rather than immediately passing, while he had tremendous influence in the first couple of months of his presidency. If he had passed the Medicare for All bill, he would have avoided 356,000 deaths. Please keep that in mind. And so many bankruptcies, 500,000 bankruptcies every year during his administration. Now, the deaths and the bankruptcies, of course, have continued under Trump. But had he passed an adequate stimulus bill, instead of one that was limited to $1 trillion, a perfectly arbitrary limit that he placed on it. Actually, the bill only amounted to $800 billion in the end, but he placed a limit of $1 trillion on that bill. And he torpedoed Medicare for All, would not allow that to happen. And he and the Democrats, the leadership of the Democratic Party, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, wasted the better part of a year and 3 months on the horrible bill that became the Affordable Care Act. Now, I know some people were saved by the Affordable Care Act, but that doesn't change the fact that the decision to go for the Affordable Care Act instead of to pass, at the height of the popularity of the administration, a Medicare for All bill, specifically an earlier version of H.R. 676, resulted in the death of 356,000 Americans that could have been avoided. So don't tell me that when we look at Biden, that he is not necessarily as terrible as Trump. It's just that deaths he causes would be reflected in a slower way over a longer period of time, and would not be due to such obvious bungling, but would be due to donor sellouts, and would be due to basically kabuki in Congress, which he would fully support. Now, I know he might not fully support that. He might have changed. He might be different. But on what basis can we judge a man who is running for Congress? In large part, it has to be based on his past record. And Biden's past record is terrible. He has been wrong about almost everything. We all know that. I don't have to talk about his record here. We all know that, and we all agree on it. We have no reason to believe that Biden will change his behavior unless we make him do it. The only way to make him do it is, first of all, we can see to it that Democrats never nominate him, and that they do not nominate anyone else. That is unacceptable to us. There are some people in the establishment who might be acceptable to us as presidential candidates. One person who comes to mind is probably Jay Inslee. He seems like a decent guy. He seems to be for Medicare for all. Seems to be for a Green New Deal, very serious about it. Somebody else is Senator Merkley, Jeff Merkley, of Oregon. He was for Medicare for all. He's for the Green New Deal. He's for many of the things in the Bernie Sanders platform. There are people the establishment can turn to that they view as people they can talk to and they can deal with. There are compromise choices, but Joe Biden is not a compromise choice. Joe Biden was as far right on that stage of the 23 candidates who were running. He must have been 3 places from the furthest right. He was the 4th most right candidate in the whole campaign, while Bernie was the most far left person, though some would argue it was Tulsi, in the campaign. So that's how far Biden was from Bernie in that campaign. That's who they turned to. That's who they nominated. That's the big middle finger they gave to us and our movement. This will continue. It will continue in 2022. It will continue in 2020 in their choices for the Congress. It will continue in 2024 unless we show them that their choices are unacceptable to us. No doubt, in doing this, we'll be taking a great risk, because Trump is a terrible and great risk. But they took that risk in 2016. They have put us in this condition where Trump is the president right now. They again were taking the risk because they knew the best person to beat Trump was Bernie, but they still manipulated the situation to get Joe Biden. So they took the risk. We have to take it too, to make the situation better. The only way to make the situation better is to make the mainstream give us concrete things in deals. We need the Medicare for All bill passed, no ifs, ands, or buts. We need the Green New Deal passed, no ifs, ands, or buts. We need student debt eliminated, no ifs, ands, or buts. We need free college, no ifs, ands, or buts. We need a great housing program, no ifs, ands, or buts. We need to have all those things. And they're going to have to give those to us, or they can just stick it. They're not going to win. We have to show them that. If we don't show them that, they will never listen to us. Now I'm not the only one on the left who is saying that. Jamal Thomas, of course, frequently says it and plays this little short clip, from Lawrence O'Donnell, where Lawrence says, when I was working for the Democratic Party, I never had to listen to any progressives. I never had to pay attention to what the progressives said, because in the end, they weren't going to do anything anyway except support us. We knew that, so we never had to listen to them. And he admitted, if they want us to listen to them at some time in the future, they're going to have to make us listen to them. And of course he's right. It's basic bargaining strategy. I mean, it's negotiating strategy. When you're negotiating, you have to be willing to walk away from the table. Bernie's fault in this campaign was that he was never willing to walk away from the table. He was never willing to say, screw you. As a movement, we have to be willing to say, it's our way or the highway. Until we're willing to do that, we're not going to even get a part of what we have, of what we need, of what we have to get for our families, for ourselves, for our futures, for our children, for our grandchildren. So what's the first thing we have to do? We have to show them that they cannot nominate Joe Biden, that he is unacceptable. That's what this group, we're starting. The Biden Record Group is what it will be called. That's what this group will try to get accomplished on social media. We're just going to try to bring the facts about Joe Biden's record to social media in such a viral way that the mainstream will not be able to ignore us. Or even if they do ignore us, in such a viral way that it will not matter. Because everybody who's within 10 feet of social media will know that Joe Biden stands no chance against Donald Trump. Now, I know the DNC would rather have Joe Biden win than Bernie. I know that. I know they're not going to turn to Bernie. At least I doubt that they will. They might, but it's a long, long shot. So this is not about getting them to turn to Bernie now. This is about getting them to turn away from Joe Biden and turn to a person who we can have a minimum amount of faith in as a better alternative than Donald Trump. Now, I've named at least 2 people who look like they might be among those people. Maybe they can bring forth some other people who have enough in common with them and whom we believe we can trust, that it would be possible to come together for this particular election. But that's not really what's so important. What's important is that we show them that they cannot nominate Joe Biden. And then when that is over, to move from there to build on the progressive movement as we have been doing, and to start moving to build another electoral coalition, another political party that we can support to end the rule of a Democratic Party that is thoroughly donor-driven and thoroughly corrupt. I think a good candidate for that would be the People's Party. The People's Party is basically running on Bernie's platform. They've taken over ideas in that platform, and they're advocating for those ideas, and they're trying to build an electoral coalition that will further those ideas. Those ideas were not just Bernie's, they were ours. The movement was us, not me, and we are the us. And the ideas motivating the movement, the issues motivating the movement, were those issues and those ideas. So the People's Party offers a possible home that we should be investigating. But the People's Party doesn't have the time to build a real party run for this fall. I mean, I don't see that. It's too little time left. So I think that gives us time. That gives us time to block what the Democrats want to do with Joe Biden. And then at that point, turn towards building the People's Party. Of course, if the Democrats come up with someone who's more acceptable, or even turn to Bernie, then we can go that way for this election. But after this election, we have to realize, there must be a third force that we can turn to that represents us all the way down the line, and that won't have people in it who are likely to sell out to the Democrats because of the deal flow. We have to show them that we have an independent third force, and that they will need us. They will need us if they want to have any share of power for a while. Then, of course, as time goes on, we will try to replace them, as the Labour Party replaced the Liberal Party at the end of World War II in the UK, and even earlier. We can eventually be the second party, and perhaps even the first party, because both of the current parties are corporate parties. And the United States does not need two corporate parties. And the people in the United States don't want two corporate parties. I don't even think they want one corporate party. But in any case, I think we can drive the corporates back to a single party, where they used to be before the Democrats sold out. When they evolved during the 1960s and 1970s to begin to take the corporate money, and then emerged full-blown during the 1980s with the New Democrats. So, that's my program for now. It is tell the truth about Joe Biden until he cannot be nominated by them. If this involves the repudiation of what Bernie says, that is too bad. We are the movement now. We are the movement now. And by giving up so early in the campaign to Joe Biden, what I think Bernie did, I hate to have to say this, I think what Bernie did was something disloyal to the movement. What he did wasn't about us. I think it was about him. But Jamal Thomas said, a little while ago today, that Bernie raised $250 million from us in this campaign. That was our blood, sweat, and tears that we gave to him. And in the end, what did he use it for? He used it to give in to Joe Biden without getting a thing for us. Without getting a thing. Not a thing for the movement. So what can we say about that? He didn't consult us. He did nothing bottom up. He didn't ask whether we wanted him to continue or not. If he had, our overwhelming verdict would have been for him to continue until the very end. For him to go right through the convention. And after the convention, to go over to the Movement for a People's Party. And if that created legal problems, let it create the legal problems. That's what we would have wanted, I think, because we were not ready to fold again. Not after what happened in 2016. It was they, the mainstream Democrats, who created the victory of Donald Trump. It wasn't us. It wasn't us. They, of course, tell this crazy story that Bernie Bros somehow did it and took the victory away from Hillary Clinton. And we didn't have a damn thing to do with the losses in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, or Michigan. Not a damn thing to do with that. It was Clinton's stupid support of the TPP until the last few months when she had no credibility that led to her defeat in the Midwestern states. States that were always Democratic, forever Democratic. She didn't give a fig for the working class, and she showed it. And that's why the working class defeated her in those states. And in other states in the Midwest, too. That were closer anyway, that were not so blue. Her defeat was of her making. It was not of our making, and Bernie had nothing to do with it. Hell, he made 40 appearances for her once he decided to support her. And he was successful in bringing most of us along. The proof is that more of Bernie's supporters supported Clinton. Then Clinton supporters supported Obama in 2008. That's the truth of the matter. The truth of the matter. So what happened in 2016 wasn't our fault. Whatever the hell they say. Anybody tries to tell you that, you tell them they're full of shit. Because they are. And if they go ahead with the nomination of Biden and he loses this time, it won't be Bernie's fault. Because Bernie's already given in. And you know Bernie, he will do his best to bring us along. He's already calling us irresponsible. And today, he called us irresponsible for saying we don't want to support Joe Biden, for saying never Biden. He is saying we are irresponsible. I say he is irresponsible for abandoning the campaign, for abandoning the movement that put so much faith in him and that invested so heavily, financially and otherwise, in his campaign. That was terribly irresponsible. Terribly irresponsible. Okay, and Russ Gorman said sheepdogging. I don't know if he was intentionally sheepdogging. I don't care if he was intentionally sheepdogging. The outcome of it all was sheepdogging. That was the outcome of it all. Well, we're not going to be sheepdogged again. That's not going to happen. The only way not to be sheepdogged again is to do everything we can to defeat Joe Biden and make sure they do not nominate Joe Biden. Yeah, I mean, I'd like a refund from the campaign too. I think Bernie ought to offer refunds to anyone who wants one. He still has considerable cash on hand. So let's have a refund. We didn't support him so he could drop out at this time. But anyway, that's not the primary message. The primary message I'm saying is we have to show them they're not going to be allowed to nominate people unacceptable to us. That means we have to block the nomination of Joe Biden by bringing down his poll numbers. By bringing down his poll numbers. That's the first thing we have to do. The second thing we have to do is find another party we can build. The platform of the People's Party, okay, is looking good. The people who are running it, okay, appear to be progressive. They appear to be for bottom-up control and self-organization of the movement for a People's Party and of the People's Party itself. So I'm saying they're a really good group to investigate very carefully. And after we're finished with our unfinished business with Joe Biden, we can move over to build a new movement for the People's Party, to make them the dominant party in the United States. So that's what I have to say about that. Before I move on to some other issues, though, and before I move on to your comments, and I will come back to all your comments. And by the way, please share this. When the YouTube video comes around, please like, share, and subscribe. And please do contribute occasionally to my Patreon account, which is at patreon.com/Joe_Firestone. And thank you. And now there are a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about First, I talked a couple of streams ago about what the Fed was doing to create a facility called, the MLF, which is the new municipal liquidity facility for states and their subdivisions. And Robert Hockett, Cornell professor of law, and an MMTer, has followed the earlier piece I covered here with a follow-up 3-page memorandum that I want to go over with you for a few moments, and I'm going to share that. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, there it is. So Bob calls this a community QE, for quantitative easing, in all but the name. He says because community QE will constitute a literal lifeline to states and their subdivisions, and will, in light of its novelty, be as unfamiliar as it is essential. And the purpose of his memorandum here is to summarize, the MLF. The date of the memorandum was the 12th of April, 2020, and he addressed it to the legislators, executives, and public finance departments of state, and local governments. And presumably he sent this out to a bunch of state, and local governments, and called this a how-to manual. And he outlined a 3-phase game plan for states and cities to put into operation immediately. That is tomorrow, which was actually yesterday, April 13th. And the first step in the game plan, the first phase was, he describes that as, the MLF will operate under cover of Section 13(3) of the Federal Reserve Act, the FRA, which grants the Federal Reserve emergency lending authority in exigent circumstances, which, of course, the pandemic of the coronavirus certainly is such a circumstance. The Fed exercises this authority through purchase and hence the monetization of financial instruments. In this case, the instruments in question will be what the MLF term sheet calls eligible notes issued by eligible issuers. He says, the following provisions are of the most immediate importance. Present exceptions to and likely future liberalizations of terms are highlighted along the way. 1. Direct purchase. The MLF will purchase securities directly from states or their subdivisions. So notice, the states and the subdivisions will be able to issue securities like, for example, treasury bonds, similar kinds of instruments. But unlike with respect to the Treasury Department, which the Fed is prohibited from trying to monetize by the Congress, in this case, the securities of the states and their subdivisions will not have to be sold first on the open market, quote unquote, to private sector financial institutions, but they will be bought directly by the Fed using this facility. 2, the terms of this will be 2 years. The months to maturity on the state and municipal paper in question will be, for now, 24 rather than 12 months as originally anticipated. He says, crucially, however, these durations are likely to be extended for reasons provided below. Then he talks about the eligible notes, and he says the term sheet requires that eligible notes will be, quote, tax anticipation notes, or TANs. Now, these are the kinds of instruments that was suggested in previous years for the EU to use. For example, to end the crisis in Greece and to end the austerity crisis in much of the EU. In other words, it was advocated for the central bank and the Troika to buy these kinds of notes from the Eurozone states, so they would be able to have more money to cope with the crash of 2008. So there are the TANs, there are the tax and revenue anticipation notes, the TRANs, which are similar instruments, and the bond anticipation notes, or BANs, or other similar short-term notes that are issued by the eligible by issuers, in this case the states and localities, which can secure lending. These notes can secure lending only up to 20% of each of the issuers' but general revenue from their own sources, and as well utility revenue from these sources for the fiscal year 2017. So the fiscal year 2017 is the measurement they're using, and what they're saying is that the issuers can borrow up to 20% of what their general revenue was, and also the utility revenue was for the fiscal year 2017. Crucially, however, states may request that the special purpose vehicle, the MLF, purchase eligible notes in excess of the applicable limit in order to assist political subdivisions and instrumentalities that are not eligible for the facility. So this is saying that the states may request that the MLF actually be used for other subdivisions of the states. There's not just for the states themselves, and for the municipalities, but for other units within the states as well, so that they can be helped during this crisis. The next part deals with the issuers, and says it'll be all the U.S. states and the district, U.S. counties with populations exceeding 2 million, and U.S. cities with populations exceeding 1 million. Crucially, however, the term sheet permits states to request that the SPV purchase eligible notes in excess of the applicable limit in order to assist subdivisions that are not eligible for the facilities. So, in other words, counties with populations less than 2 million and cities with populations less than 1 million might also be helped under this. It's possible. It's going to be, in some part, up to the Fed to agree to help those units at the request of the states. 5. Eligible use. Presently, the term sheet stipulates that proceeds of note sales be used to help manage the cash flow impact of income tax deferrals resulting from an extension of an income tax filing deadline, potential reductions of tax and other revenues, or increases in expenses related to or resulting from the pandemic, and requirements for the payment of principal and interest on the obligations of the state. The Fed seeks, in these words, to encourage perception of the MLF as a tied-over facility, as a bridge facility, essentially, meant to assist counterparties in, as the term sheet puts it, managing their cash flows. Crucially, however, other sections of the term sheet emphasize the prospect of longer-term rollover of the debt of these notes, while analysts also anticipate expansion of coverage from 24 months to longer-term paper, as explained immediately below. And so now we come to the second phase, okay, of this the process. So Bob says, much of the language found in the MLF term sheet suggests that present conditionality will be loosened even further than it has been already relative to what was anticipated last month. There are 2 additional reasons outside the 4 corners of the document which further underwrite the expectation of further easing. 1. Fed interpretive pronouncements. Chairman Powell and the Board of Governors of the Fed have publicly encouraged a flexible interpretation of all conditional language found in the MLF's term sheet. They have also repeatedly stated that they will be monitoring the debt of the municipalities for signs of resumed volatility. In other words, this is to treat the volatility that has been observed in the markets due to the COVID virus, the muni markets. The Fed is saying, we have the responsibility to help to stabilize those markets so they do not crash and cause a financial crisis for the states. So the Fed is stepping up and claiming a responsibility which it has not acknowledged before. This is very important. With an eye to intervening further to stabilize them if and as that is necessary. Combined with the many openings for extension and exception specified in the term sheet itself as described above, these amount to assurances that the MLF is a work in progress whose scope will expand if and as the need for it expands. So the Fed is saying the MLF is just the first step, and it stands ready to expand this very greatly in case of a financial crisis in the states and localities. Then item 2 here, analyst prescriptions and by predictions. Bond market and public finance experts have called on the Fed to purchase state and muni debt with maturities not only in excess of traditional 6-month and 12-month durations, but also in the excess of the new 24-month duration. So there'll be a choice for the states of the kind of paper they want to issue. Now, they can issue 6-month or 12-month or 24-month, but maybe even in excess of 24 months. The Fed has done nothing to discourage such calls by the bond markets, Most commentators, not to mention smart money on the markets, seem now to anticipate upwards of 3 to 5 year state debt, okay, and but also municipality debt to find its way onto the MLF balance sheet. Now, this, of course, cannot be predicted with certainty. States and cities faced with serious crises should judge that what's likely to happen is that they're going to have the maturity actually lengthened, more likely than not. Bob then moves to step 3 of the game plan here, the third phase. Okay, he talks about an April game plan for states and their subdivisions. In light of the above, he says states and their subdivisions should begin planning for use of the new facility immediately. He says this facility is unprecedented. The Fed is improvising right now. What states and cities do now in response to the improvisation will thus be decisive in determining what shape the MLF takes as it unfolds. States and their subdivisions are, in other words, co-authors of this new authority of the Fed. It will ultimately be what they make of it. The following 3-phase game plan is proposed with that existential truth in view. And here he names the phases. Phase 1 is immediate quantitative sessions of the legislatures. All state governors and legislatures should go into emergency session at once, virtually if need be, to determine how much funding to seek from the MLF. These sessions should also include a representative of the state's principal subdivisions, B, appropriate public finance personnel, and C, also representatives of the regional Federal Reserve banks in whose operational jurisdictions the relevant states and subdivisions are located. Because the need of funds generally is likely to be recognized and agreed upon even more quickly than the full panoply of uses, of funds. Phase 1 can be limited, to deliberation and decision over how much funding to seek and whom to authorize to begin preparations for the new issuances that the states and their subdivisions will sell to the MLF. I can't emphasize enough here. What's being done is to allow the states and their subdivisions to issue bonds and securities in general that the Fed is going to monetize. So the states will have the capability to run deficits that the federal government has had, deficits in the billions. It will free the governors up to do good and necessary things for their states. Whereas before, there were most states were limited by their tax base to what were basically always austerity budgets of one kind and another. Now, this facility will allow the states to escape from austerity if the facility is institutionalized. It is so important, and really revolutionary. Phase 2, subsequent allocative sessions. Once all Phase 1 decisions have been reached and the appropriate state and local personnel have been assigned their note issuing and their Fed liaising tasks, states and their subdivisions can proceed to Phase 2 preparations, gathering information, testimony, advice, and all other deliberative inputs necessary to make sensible allocation decisions in respect of the new funding that will be incoming from the MLF. And then Phase 3, later, envelope pushing sessions, Once Phase 2 deliberations end in allocation decisions, states and their subdivisions might turn to Phase 3 deliberations over whether to press the Fed for further easing the terms of the MLF term sheet. It might be decided, for example, that authorization to purchase state and muni paper of longer maturity than 24 months should be sought, or that a rollover option should be made more explicit. These questions can presumably wait, however, until current uncertainties on the ground are resolved. With any luck, the pandemic might be contained before we reach any Phase 3. But the important conclusion here, of course, is that if it's not contained before we reach any Phase 3, then these envelope-pushing sessions in Phase 3 would be essential for the economic health of the states. Conclusion. However that may be, what matters now is that Phase 1 commence, and that it commence with all deliberate speed. The author of this memorandum will continue to watch events unfold, and will follow up with further reporting and recommendations on an as seems to be needed basis. Best wishes to all as we now reassume control of our public and our productive health. I think this memo is a much needed, very, very significant memo. Not something the public is really aware of or is likely to become aware of. But we have to realize the significance of this. Right now, the MLF is pegged at $500 billion for people. That's only backed by $75 billion. Only $75 billion, okay, of Treasury funds. But there's a lot more Treasury funds where that came from the original bailout bill. And this facility can really expand if the expansion is needed. If the Fed believes that it's needed. And they will believe because they'll be looking at the health of the economy. They'll be looking at the stability of the states. And evidently, Jay Powell wants to do something to help the states. He's not sitting there and trying to bargain with Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump about that. He's taken the bull by the horns, and he is offering money to the states that was not really envisioned by the Congress. Okay? I don't believe. But in collaboration with the Treasury Department, that's what is happening. And this is potentially a very, very good effect. Okay, I wanted to cover that. I thought that it was very important to do so. I hope, okay, that you agree. There's also something else I want you to take note of, which I think you'll find, okay, is quite important also. That's an article that appeared in the American Prospect.
Problems. COVID-19.
It's by Dave Dayen and from today. Your coronavirus check is coming. Your bank can grab it. Now, the basic fact here is that the issue has arisen since the $1,200 CARES payment for each of us is considered a tax credit and not a benefit that has been passed by the Congress. As a tax credit, it can be seized by creditors. Okay, and if an individual has his or her bank as a creditor, okay, of the individual, and if the individual is behind in payments to the banks, then the regulators have ruled that there's nothing in the law that says that the banks can't seize all or part of the $1,200 payment to pay off outstanding debt. Dave makes clear that Congress did not exempt CARES Act but payments from debt collections by private people. The only exemption was with respect to debt collection from the federal and state governments. In other words, your payment is protected from the federal and state governments if you happen to owe them money, but not from private debt collection. Why not? Because that's the way this neoliberal Congress rolls. That's what that's about, not for any rational reason. Anyway, banks would be first in line to grab the payments to offset a delinquent loan or past due fees. Even if the individual thinks their account with that bank is closed, if the payments post there, in other words, if they're sent there by the IRS, the bank could conceivably use those payments to cover the old debts. So the Treasury Department effectively blessed this activity on a webinar with banking officials last week. In audio that was obtained by the prospect, in other words, actually by Dave, Rhonda Kent, Chief Disbursing Officer with the Treasury's Bureau of the Fiscal Service, can be heard explaining that banks had posed questions to about whether these payments could be subject to collection from the bank to which the money is deposited if the payee owes an outstanding loan or other payments to the bank. She responded twice. There's nothing in the law that precludes such action. And she said, you want to know for your bank what your bank has decided to do. So Dave called some of the big banks and asked them what they were going to do. Whether they were going to grab all or part of these $1,200 payments if their depositors happen to owe them some money. The only one of the big banks that responded by saying that it wasn't going to do that thus far was Chase. The other four big banks that were contacted by Dave did not respond to his inquiries. Now, of course, some people in Congress are outraged, and they're making noise about it. 25 states' attorney generals are making noise about it. Some states are going to issue regulations about it. Sherrod Brown was outraged by it, Ron Wyden, so Senator Warren. They wrote to the Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, urged him to write the rules because Treasury has the option to write some rules prohibiting the banks from doing that. They were given the option in the law to do that. The Treasury was. And Sherrod Brown later teamed up with Republican Senator Hawley, Josh Hawley, to ask for the same things. Josh Hawley is often with us on these kind of issues. In fact, he very often is far more progressive than people who claim to be progressive like Joe Biden. So, the prospect reached out to 5 leading banks: Wells Fargo, J.P. Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citibank, and U.S. Bank, asking if they plan to use the payments to offset some of the debts. Only J.P. Morgan Chase has provided an answer and said while they would normally use incoming funds to offset a negative balance on a charged-off account, For these payments, it will return the money to the government. Okay, the U.S. Treasury, it said, can then determine the address to mail the full stimulus amount and ensure the former customer gets the full amount, okay, of the benefit. That's what their spokeswoman, Ann Pace, had said. She clarified this would only be in the circumstance of a charged-off account, leaving open the possibility of using a directly deposited payment to offset the current loans. None of the other four banks would commit to this process, to say nothing of the thousands of banks and credit unions across the country. But Treasury's Bureau of the Fiscal Service did not respond to a request for comment. Anyway, I wanted you to know about that too. I think your best bet, okay, at this point, if you have any doubts about whether you're going to get your $1,200, is to call your congressperson and call your senators and make a big noise and say this was not intended to pay any bank debts. It was intended as a stimulus, and they better do whatever the hell they have to do to prevent the banks from taking your $1,200. I think that's a very important thing that you should do. Okay? Okay, I'm going to move now to your comments. Let me see where we are. Kathy says, hi, Joe. And Dolores says, hi, all. Sandy says, hi. Steve says, we're here, Doc. Stacy says, good evening, peoples. Okay, and Rick has left us a link to peoplesaction.org. As I mentioned earlier, Rick has left us another link to crowdcast.io. Which is about collective care in a something or other. I don't know what that's about, but you might want to take a look at it. Steve always, Rick always has good links. Steve Wolfbrandt is next. He said, watch Anomaly's latest video on COVID being man-made. Pretty convincing. I'm not a fan of his show, though, but he got this one right. Well, maybe he didn't. But anyway, it's probably worth taking a look at. Stephanie says, oh my God, I'm getting so much shit from my cover photo on my Facebook page. In huge writing, it says, I will never vote for Joe Biden on a huge blue background. And then she says, by LMFAO, Limfao. Limfao. Margot says, hi, everyone. Steve says, I'm still trying to reach this knife in my back. I think we're all trying to reach that, Steve. I think the best way to pull it out is to go after Biden and make sure he is not the nominee, of the Democratic Party. Kay says, hey, everybody. FB has been screwed up for me the last couple of hours, so if I disappear, you will know why. Yeah, that's FB. Jim Lockett says, howdy. Steve says, hello, Kay. Hi, Kay. Hey, Sandy. And then Rick had an advertisement of something that happened at 7 p.m. with a lot of extremely well-known people. That's probably worth taking a look at. But, okay, let's be careful about it. Because these are Sanders for 2020 leaders, and they're people who are prominent in the movement, but also people who are prominent, in electoral politics. And at this point, they may be looking to sheepdog us into something. And we're not looking to be sheepdog right now. I don't think so. Sandy says, woohoo, you can restart it. Steve says, never Biden. Kay says, Bernie is going to be live on YouTube at about 9:30. I just got... Oh, you mean I'm competing with Bernie? Stacy said, somebody made up an excellent montage video on Biden and how horrible he is. Stacy, leave us the link, please. Kay says, Obama's not our friend. Yeah, I know. Steve says, I'm not really interested in anything Bernie has to say at this point. I'm always interested in what he has to say. After all, he might want to give us our money back. Kay says, I understand, but I am. Steve says, they're dying in our streets every day. I see it with my own eyes. Yeah. Kay says, Obamacare was a GOP program to begin with. Yes, it was. It was a program, if I recall correctly, was developed at the Heritage Foundation, which at that time was a Koch-supported group. And Luann says, but Biden is a rapist. And Biden says, hi, everybody. And Sandy says, hi, Bonnie. And Bernie said, his supporters are being irresponsible if they don't vote for Biden. Unbelievable. I know, I thought that was unbelievable. I thought he had no right at all to say that. He had no right at all. And Dolores says, I agree, I was furious when I read that. Stacy left to the YouTube. That's probably the YouTube for Bernie. Jim says they will give nothing. We need to sabotage every crack in the establishment's armor. Power yields nothing without pain. I think that's right. We need to make them feel our pain. They don't feel our pain. They will feel our pain if they lose their deal flows. Russell says, I think the establishment Dems are hoping there will be enough. Never Trump repubs to tilt the election. Well, maybe there will be. It's not actually determined. We don't know now. It depends on how many people Trump kills during this crisis. It depends on what else he does. When he's going towards the election and he's panicked, okay, that he's not going to win. Now, he can do anything. He can start a foreign war. Start killing people in Venezuela, okay, or Iran. I don't think he dare start to kill people in China, but who knows? Stacy says, my middle child says Mark Cuban is thinking of throwing his hat in now. Can he still get into the primaries? He's got to get the signatures to get onto the ballot. I mean, what good is it if he throws his hat in and Biden, okay, is nominated on the first ballot? That's not going to do any good. I mean, what the hell was he waiting for? If he was going to compete with Bernie, he should have come in a long time ago. Okay, and Lana said, which party? I asked her that. She didn't know. Well, obviously, she's going to come into the Democratic Party. He's not going against Trump now, not at this particular late date. And Jim says it would have to be the Democrats. Trump's numbers just keep going up. They're not going to keep going up. They're going to start coming down. As the people start to die, of course, they've already started to die, but it's only 25,000 right now. When it gets to be 50,000, 60,000, if he opens up the economy too soon, which, of course, he's very likely to do, and suddenly there's a second wave, okay, the pandemic, and even more people start to die, his numbers are not going to just keep going up. I mean, the power of PR is not that great. The power of the media is not that great. He doesn't even have all the media He has his media, of course. It's just not that great. Stacy says, independent. He seems awfully wealthy to have independent ideas. But he could run, okay, as an independent, perhaps. So he might not be aiming, okay, for the Democratic Party. He might be aiming third party. And he has the money to self-fund. Russ says, sheepdogging. Susan says, so disappointed in Bernie. I want a refund. Sandy says, I heard that about Cuban. Stacy says, seems out of character when he is so careful not to step on other candidates. But he calls us irresponsible. Yeah, I was really angry at him in this campaign for a number of reasons. I was angry at him for going after Zephyr Teachout. I was angry at him for going after Nina Turner. Okay, I was angry at him for keeping his surrogates reined in. I was angry at him for going after David Sirota. And, of course, I'm angry at him for giving up without consulting, making the decision himself, as if it was a me, not us decision. No, that was an us decision. Susan says, Bernie is making it sound like if Biden loses, it's our fault because we didn't work hard enough to get him elected. He's setting us up to take the blame already. Look, we're not going to take the blame. We may get the blame from them. But who cares what they think? We're not going to be guilted into this. And we're not going to be guilted into this. We need to make sure Biden never gets nominated because he can't win. I mean, Bernie is going to support Biden and get him nominated, and Trump is going to rip him a new one. We know that's going to happen. There's no way Biden can win from Trump unless Trump totally collapses. Of course, he has the capacity to totally collapse because he pushes and pushes and pushes. And he goes too far, and he's such an idiot. He doesn't know when to pull back, okay, when to be cautious. He does have the capacity, though, to go to the opposite side. I mean, what I mean is, he can be following one particular strategy in one particular direction, and the next day he's going in an entirely different direction if he suddenly gets to thinking that's necessary. He can do that. Biden can't do that. He's not, I mean, in a certain sense, Trump is, he's pragmatic. He will throw stuff up against the wall until something sticks. Biden won't do that. He's hard bound by ideology, specifically neoliberal ideology. Kay says Biden's poll numbers are already pretty dismal. Yeah. Russ asks, do you have a link to those groups? To which groups? To the People's the People's Party? It's at peoplesparty.org. Okay, Movement for a People's Party is, I think that's it. You know, Movement for a peoplesparty.org. Anyway, if you search those two out, you'll get it. I agree with Steve Grumbine that we need an economically literate party. Well, okay, peoplesparty.org states its favorability to Stephanie Kelton and her views on economics in its opening statement. It's right there. Now, I'm not going to say that they're as literate as all that, but there are people in the People's Party who are, and in previous discussions, with RP and with Steve, there were statements of alliance made with the MMT movement. And those are still on the website. They haven't changed, as far as we know. Susan says, Bernie's going to try to make his volunteers do for a Biden what we did for him. No way. We were never volunteering for Biden. Randy says, where is my 1,200? The checks are supposed to start arriving soon, like maybe next week, maybe even some of them this week. Susan says, I'm going to ask for a refund tomorrow from the Bernie campaign. That's probably a good idea. If a whole bunch of us ask for refunds, maybe it'll bring Bernie to his senses. Amy Sato says, Susan Eldridge, don't worry. He has to say this to satisfy the DNC. He also told us not to listen to him if he told us to vote for someone. Okay, my reply to that, Amy, is that I'm not worried. I'm angry. I'm disappointed. I'm offended. And I am enraged. But I am not worrying. There's nothing to worry about. He's ended his campaign. We're not going into the Biden campaign. Kay said, yes, he's trying to herd us into the Biden campaign. He will work harder than anyone else to get Biden elected. If Biden loses, they will say Bernie didn't work hard enough. Bernie never learns and has horrid political instincts. He has very good political instincts about certain things. I mean, his instincts were good enough to get 1 million volunteers actually working for him. His instincts are good enough to motivate 25,000 people in a mass rally. His instincts are good enough on his platform. But when it comes to strategy and tactics, when he has to negotiate with people, or when he has to exert influence and power, yes, he has horrid political instincts about that. He did before. Look, when the Obama administration wanted to pass the Affordable Care Act, they wanted Bernie's vote. They really did. They really wanted Bernie's vote. They wanted him not to try to block things and gum up the works. And he negotiated with Harry Reid, and Nancy Pelosi for the community health centers. So this was a $1 trillion bill over 10 years. Okay, so do you know what Bernie negotiated for and got? He got $10 billion over 10 years. $1 billion per year for community health centers. 1% of the total amount that was projected for the program. If it was me, I wouldn't have settled for less than 10%. And if they had told me, it's only $1 trillion over 10 years. It's only $1 trillion over 10 years. Okay, it's only $100 billion a year. We can't give you more than $1 billion. Okay, I would have said, look, you just go ahead and you make it $1.1 trillion. And then you can have your trillion, and I could have my $10 billion a year for community health centers. That's what a negotiator does. If not, I'm going to filibuster this bill. That's what I'm going to do. Because without the community health centers, it's a stinky bill. And I'm not going to vote for it. That's what you got to say. Now that hasn't always worked out for me in life. Okay, I fully admit. Sometimes it has, and sometimes, okay, it hasn't. As I think someone once says, sometimes the sun shines. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, and sometimes it rains. Isn't that the expression? Okay. And that's the way it is. But you win some. And when you win, okay, it matters. You win something that matters. You don't make a deal for something that doesn't matter. Kay says, I've been hearing that if you owe a bank any fees, they can hijack your $1,200 COVID check, providing we get one. Yes, I covered that, Kay, as you now know. Amy Sato says that was in 2016 with HRC. His tone, okay, is different now. Yeah, it's worse. Sandy says, oh, maybe Bernie wants him to fail. He knows we didn't support Hillary, so why would we do it this time for Biden? Actually, we did support Hillary. More of us supported Hillary percentage-wise than Hillary supporters supported Obama in 2008. So Bernie was very successful in sheepdogging us into the Democratic Party in 2016. So Bernie probably thought he could do it again. Steve says, here in California, governor news. What kind of governor news, Steve? What kind of governor news? Kay said, yes, Dave Dayen did an article on this today. Yes, he did. As discussed. Steve says, here in California, and then he didn't finish. And Susan says, it has to do with outstanding debt you owe to the bank. Kay says, either way, it sucks. Big banks win again. Well, they may not win from you, Kay, because it's only in cases where you owe money to the bank that has the account that they send the money to. But if they're sending it to you by mail anyway, they don't get anything. And Rick Maynard says night all, and Sandy Degg says night Richard, and Lana says I don't think it's just about bank fees, etc. Could be IRS debt or child support. I also saw Chase Bank was not going to enforce this, and I hope the rest of the banks follow suit. They should have written the bills so this couldn't happen. Of course they should have. Of course they should have. You know, they only did it for the government, for government debt. And somebody didn't think maybe we ought to do it for private debt too? I mean, the banks run the place. Susan Eldridge, only for past due amount. They can't just take everyone's dollars willy-nilly. But it's still immoral during this crisis. It is. It's immoral because it was never the intention of the bill to give them any relief from debts that were owed to them. Steve says this is complete bullshit. 1/3 of people. Breaking news. Trump halting relief checks until his name is printed on them? Kay says, these Congress, Senate members do a half-assed job on most things anymore. They aren't even showing up to work until May 4th, I heard today. SMH, not a crisis for them. They do a half-assed job because they don't have time to read these bills. When bills are created by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and by Kevin McCarthy, okay, and Mitch McConnell, then their staffs and lobbyists are writing these bills. And the other members of Congress only get to see these bills with a day or two of notice before they have to vote on the bill. So the people we elected don't have time to see what's in these bills, to know what loopholes and traps are in these bills, and what hidden benefits for the lobbyists are there. Steve says 1/3 of people couldn't pay April rent. How can they pay double for May? Steve says we are screwed. Sandy says the rich never have a crisis, just us. We can make the rich have a crisis. We can make the rich have a crisis. But we got to be willing to do that. Steve says this country is completely over. Please turn off the lights on your way out. Kay says, I think so too, Steve. Lana says, Susan Eldridge, so frustrating with Bernie. I think he doesn't want to get blamed if Trump wins again. He doesn't want to be the modern Ralph Nader sigh. Bernie's a lot older than Ralph Nader was in 2000. Okay, a lot older. So Bernie's had a good run. He's had a good run. He can afford to be Ralph Nader. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to blame him in 2024? That's not going to help them to win in 2024. In 2024, they're not going to have a party. That party's going to fall apart because it never does anything for people. Susan says, Lana Dell agreed, but he doesn't need to throw us all under the bus in the process. Kay says he'll get blamed anyway. He will. They always blame him, whatever he does. He does 40 appearances for Hillary, and they blame him for her losing. They're not really blaming him. They're lying. They're lying. It's a strategy. It's supposed to work on third parties. It's supposed to work on the people. Oh, it's Bernie's fault. It's not their fault. I think one of these days the people are going to say, look, I don't care whose fault it is. I'm getting screwed, and you're screwing me, and I don't care. I'm going to screw you back. That's what they did when they voted for Trump. And they might just do that again and vote for Trump again this time. Or in 2024, they might vote for something entirely different and even more dangerous. Because if Biden becomes the president, they're still going to be screwed by the Democratic Party. Sandy says, well, let's hope he does take the bull by the horns because we don't need the stuff from the other end of the bull. Stacy says, linky to the MLF memo. Did I not leave a linky to the MLF memo? If I did not leave it, if I did not leave a link to all the things I talked about today, then I will edit the Facebook post and you will have the links. But I thought I did leave them, but I may be mistaken. I should have put it in my description. Susan says it's up to the banks if they want to do this. I think the public backlash will be huge if they do. Me too. Lana says, Susan says, Lana Dell could turn into a PR nightmare for the banks and they could lose a lot of customers. And Sandy says, well, that's really TY. Susan Eldridge says, what a world we live in. I have lost all hope. Sandy says, people will be jumping off bridges. When the stock market crashes, they'll be jumping off bridges too. Steve Wolfbrand said, meth head homeless. Does a $1,200 check go directly to the meth dealer asking for a friend? I hope not. Sandy says they better make noise and actually do something, not just lip service. Call your Congress people, support Rashida Tlaib's bill. That's a pretty important bill. Steve says illegal farm workers are not considered essential. Go figure. Gee, I thought they were considered essential. Susan says, sorry. So Monadel says to Susan, yes, I agree. Why didn't they write it into the original bill that this could not happen? SMH. Sandy says that's why food is rotting in the fields. Kay says I still owe on one credit card that I used to take care of my late hubby and me before either of us got an ESS. If I get a $1,200 check, I will use part of it to pay that sucker off. If you're not banking with the credit card company now, then probably you won't have to forego any of that check. It'll probably come to you, and then you'll be able to pay it off to get rid of the sucker. Susan says, Lana Dell, because they don't care. Kay says, laugh out loud. Bernie didn't have much to say, really, so you didn't miss a thing. And Russell said, I think Bernie and Cardi B are doing something. Oh, you think they're doing something for Biden tonight? Kathy says, thanks, Kay. And Sandy says, Lee, don't see some in the comments. Kathy says, I never see all the comments either. Yeah, it's funny about these comments. I'm not sure I see all the comments either. Russell says, have you listened to any of Trump's COVID-19 daily breakdowns? He goes into a litany of private that include Art Laffer and Jamie Dimon. Yeah, I know, it's ridiculous. I have seen some of those. It's really ridiculous. I mean, but I think that people are beginning to understand that these briefings by Trump, when the scientists are not speaking, these briefings by Trump are bullshit. And I think they're starting to turn away. So on Monday, presumptive Democratic presidential party Joe Biden aligns himself with the campaign by big business and the Trump administration to force workers to go back to work regardless of the dangers from the coronavirus epidemic. I don't think it's going to work. I think that workers are going to stay home. I have to see, though. Kay says, GOP idiots in Ohio House are trying to force DeWine to reopen our economy too soon. DeWine told them no. Now, there's one Republican with guts who cares about his people. Steve says, Chelsea isn't Bill's kid. Harry is not Charles's kid. And Michelle is a man, and those girls aren't their kids. It's all fake. Steve Wolfbrand said People's Party should be Working People's Party. Well, the Working People's Party is a separate party. It's not the People's Party. And by the way, it's not as progressive as the People's Party either. Don't forget, they nominated Warren this time around in preference to Bernie. Sandy says checks are coming out tomorrow. Oh, you mean the wires are coming tomorrow? If the wires are coming tomorrow, hopefully there's something that will be available late tonight. We have to see. Steve says, I never want to hear Bernie's name again. I remember Bernie saying he wouldn't dismiss his base like Obama did, but it feels like he did that, okay, in another way. Yeah, I mean, I think that he did. He doesn't have the loyalty of his base anymore. Because in supporting Biden and then in calling people irresponsible, he's probably done much to destroy his base. I mean, his base isn't his base. He's got to now come back to us, and he's got to persuade us to support him, even though he's supporting Biden. And he dare not. He dare not ask us to support Biden ourselves. And he dare not call us irresponsible. That's not going to work. Kay says community health centers here in Ohio are a joke. I can't get an appointment for months. Yeah, that's because he settled for $1 billion instead of forcing them to go $10 billion. Steve said, I wore him. Stacy says, Bernie didn't sheepdog me. I voted for Jill Stein. Thank you, Stacy. Well, I don't think he's going to sheepdog people this time either. Dale says, fool me once, won't get fooled again. Steve said, I worked so hard for Bert. Kathy says, me too, Stacy. Russ says, I need to call it a night. See you again soon. Thanks, Russ. And Steve said, Bernie Sanders, he can go fuck himself. Kat said, I can tell you were really upset tonight, Joe. Somehow it really comes across tonight. I've been upset for a long time, but I'm upset. Yes, I'm upset. I'm upset at the endorsement. I'm upset at the, suspension of the campaign. What I'm really upset about is that he didn't consult us. That is what I am really upset about. He kept talking about from the bottom on up, not from the top on down. He kept talking about not me, us. All that stuff. If it's from the bottom on up, you got to ask the bottom. Before you take a big decision like that, you got to ask the bottom. John Seychelles says, I'm willing to vote for Biden only if he picks a well-known progressive such as Nina Turner, and so on, even Bernie himself. If not, I will in fact vote for the PSL party with Gloria Lariza. I think you're talking about the VP pick for Biden. If he were to pick Nina Turner, he might change a few minds. But I don't think it would give him the same degree of Bernie support. Now, don't get me wrong. She's a great person, and she would have been a great pick for Bernie, okay, as vice president. But she doesn't have the name recognition, okay, that Bernie has. So she won't be able to help Joe Biden, okay, as much. On the other hand, if he were to say she was his choice for vice president, and she accepted, then more people might be willing to be sheepdogged. Sandy says, I'm not voting for Biden. I will go to third party again. Margot said, thanks again, Dr. Joe. So I think that's the end of your comments. I don't see any more. So it's also 11:01. So I think I'm going to say good night. I'll be back again tomorrow night with another scintillating live stream. Some politicians said we can live 10. I'm sorry, 10 what? Steve said good night. Kay said, well, I'm out of here tonight, tired and stressed out, although my daughter in Florida is a lot better. That's really good. Her BP was down a lot today. They MRI'd her head today, hoping she might get to go home tomorrow. Fingers crossed. Terrible time to be in any hospital now. Stay safe, and we'll talk soon. Thank you, Kay. And Dolores says, thank you and good night. And Lana says, glad to hear that. Yeah, I'm really glad to hear it too. Good night, folks. Tomorrow during the 9 o'clock hour. And hopefully we will have our group launched by then.